UPL back practicing. What does that mean for this goalie situation? We got a lot to figure out coming up here in the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and welcome into this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can check us out on YouTube. Hit the like and subscribe button if you are watching the show, and also you can become a part of our Locked On Sabres text club if you're interested by heading over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. That is the place to sign up, and then it's a text club from there on. So have some fun with that if you want, as well as we roll to the season. 1 week from tomorrow is opening night. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here on a Wednesday. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, we got a preseason game tonight, preseason game number 5 against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then one more game after that in Pittsburgh, and then we're on to the Rangers. On to the Rangers, start of the year, and we're rolling into the season. Cannot wait for that. On today's show, we'll go through the goalie situation. It's going to be a trio, I think. We got to figure that out. And also, one under-the-radar training camp hero, if you will, for this season, and that seems to have been Ryan Johnson, Sabres defenseman, who I've written off and really don't think he's going to be a regular NHLer, but he's impressing right now, and maybe he's throwing his hat in the ring to be in the lineup on opening night. So a little bit on him coming up in a little bit as well. A lot of fun stuff to get to as we also continue to track these league contracts and Kaprizov, and there's some reporting on Eichel in the last couple of days since the Kaprizov contract that he might not get near what Kaprizov got at $17 million per year. Friedman and Saravelli and these guys talking about $13.5 million for Jack Eichel. I think is wild. I think it is absolutely bonkers that he would not continue to set the market along with Kaprizov, and he would take basically a hometown discount for Vegas, but that's a big hometown discount. I mean, $4 million we're talking about here potentially is nuts, especially when you could argue Eichel's worth more than Kaprizov because he's a centerman and a better defensive player. McDavid, I hope, doesn't take less because I'm always looking for these players to get more and more money, right? It takes it from the billionaire owners. And the NHL has been the weirdest of these leagues when it comes to guys just don't want to, I guess, take too much or come off as a me guy if they push for too much. I don't know. Hockey culture is very different than other sports. And I think the owners take advantage of that. So I'd like to see these guys push for more and more money. And also, you know, the cap's going to continue to go up. So it's not like 13 million feels like a lot right now. I mean, it doesn't. And then in 5 years, it won't either, but whatever. I'm not going to lose sleep over what Jack Eichel's making, but as it plays into these other contracts, Alex Tuck and others, it is interesting to me that he could possibly take less, and maybe McDavid would take less. I don't know. Maybe Kaprizov was a one-off for how much he took. We'll see. To the Sabres, goalie trio. We're right back. We've had this show before. It's been a while, though. Eric Comrie was probably on the team. It's been a couple of years since we talked about goalie trios and kind of how this is all going to shake out. Well, how did we get here? Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen had an injury. It was mysterious. Nobody really knew the extent or how long it could keep him out. I think the Sabres showed through their actions that they didn't really know how long Luukkonen could be out or how serious it could be. They signed Alex Georgiev. That action tells you they weren't fully sure. So they just went ahead and did it. They gave him a little bit above the league minimum, and they got another veteran goalie to ensure they weren't going to have to press Devin Levi into duty. And I throw that in as part of this, I think. The Sabres are clearly very intent on Levi starting the year in Rochester and growing organically through the minors before they rush him to the NHL like they already have more than once. And part of what Georgiev could have been is not just, hey, Luukkonen insurance, it's keeping Levi in Rochester insurance. is why he was here. So now here we are, though, a couple of weeks later, and Georgiev is on the team, and Luukkonen's ready. Luukkonen is ready. He's been practicing. By all accounts, he has looked good at practice. He has had no setbacks, and he's going to play tonight. The plan is, I guess, 2 periods, but potentially he'll play the whole game. We'll see. But this is him ramping up to be ready for opening night, where at this point, 8 days away, I would tell you that Luukkonen is probably going to be their starter against the New York Rangers. The only thing I think that could prevent that at this point would be him having an injury setback. If he hadn't gotten back in time for a preseason game, I would wonder, like, okay, maybe they go with Lyon at the start of the year. He's a little bit more ready. He's been practicing more. He's been playing in these games. Maybe they slow play Luukkonen a little bit, but over a week in advance, I think that's enough time. That's enough practice time. He'll get his preseason reps, and I think he'll be your starter night 1. So let's assume, for sake of conversation, all goes well with Luukkonen in the next 8 days, and he is ready to go. Well, how do we see that split? I think you go into the year with what the original plan was. The original plan was that Luukkonen would be your 1A and that Alex Lyon would be your 1B. And you're talking about probably a 60-40% split between UPL and Lyon. I personally like the idea of Lyon playing as much as Luukkonen, if not even more, because not even think. His numbers have been better in the last 3 seasons, 4 seasons, whatever timeline you want, than Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. So that might happen naturally, though. UPL might struggle and Lyon might perform well, whatever. Like, I think Lindy often is the guy that will play the hot goalie. And if Lyon's playing better, then I think he's going to play more games. And if UPL's playing better, then I think that UPL is going to play more games. I guess it just comes down to your confidence in both goaltenders. And I've often not been very confident in UPL, and really that's kind of rung true every single season except for one. So I hope I'm wrong on him again, but you're just seeing so much inconsistency in his game year to year to year that I don't know what to expect from him at the start of the season. But I know, or I'm pretty sure we know at this point, he's going to get the first crack at it. He got paid. He was their number 1. They've talked him up. He was highly drafted. He's going to get every opportunity to be that number 1 goaltender. Now, the thing that I want to mention before we get to the Alex Georgiev part of this is just the idea of having 3 goaltenders. It's weird that we're here because the Sabres don't like it. Nobody does. Lindy just said earlier this week that he's not necessarily a fan of having 3 goalies on a roster at the same time. Kevin Adams, I remember sitting in with me and Jeremy on WGR a couple of years ago. He was in studio with us, and this is when they would have had Comrie and UPL and maybe also Levi after they had just had Craig Anderson also thrown in the mix. Adams told us he doesn't like having 3 goalies on a roster at the same time, and some of the problems that arise from that are things that you might not even thinking about, because sure, there's playing time for each guy, and generally, if you have 3, one guy's not in the rotation. When Comrie was on the Sabres and he was the 3rd guy for a while, I mean, he would go months without playing, at least weeks. Looking back on that final year that Eric Comrie was a Buffalo Sabre, that's the 23-24 season. There was an injury early on, but then he kind of fell out of the rotation. He went from December 5th to March 7th. So that's a 3-month timeline where he played one game against the Florida Panthers. And again, there was a little bit of injury there. And then after March 7th, he didn't play again until April 15th. So he played a bunch early and then like a game every other month. Like it just wasn't really in the cards at all for Eric Comrie. So is that what Georgiev is going to be? But again, though, what I was getting to is that's the obvious stuff, is playing time in the games. Practice reps. It doesn't really help anybody when, hey, Alex Lyon, You're only going to get 70% of the reps that you normally would today. And UPL, you're only going to get 80% of the reps that you normally would today because we got to rotate Alex Georgiev into the net. Because otherwise, he'll just be standing to the side throughout all of practice and never get any practice reps in. So splitting practice reps between the three, there's only 2 nets. That can be harmful, I think, to your top 2 guys. So there are other problems that arise beyond just, hey, are there enough starts for this guy to play? So when we come back, what about the Georgiev piece of it? What could happen with him? What should happen with him? What are the possible options now that UPL's back healthy? That's coming up as we try to make sense of this current goalie trio the Sabres have here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNHL. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, 8 days away from the start of the regular season. We are back to having 3 goalies now that UPL is healthy, and that means we got to find a spot for Alex Georgiev. And what is that spot? Possible options. 3rd goalie in Buffalo. I think that's most likely. Backup goalie in Rochester to Devin Levi. I would be stunned if that ended up being the outcome here. I cannot imagine Alex Georgiev signed up for or would accept report to Rochester to be Devin Levi's backup. Just my guess. Other options. Waivers. Also a big option. They could really put him on waivers, and if he goes unclaimed, keep him on the roster. Give him an opportunity to see if anybody else wants him. However, I don't know how likely that is. He was available to sign with anybody for months and months. He only signs a couple of weeks ago, more than 2 months into the offseason. Anyone could have had him for $800,000, and nobody did it. So maybe there's a team that runs into an injury that would be willing to do it, but I'm not assuming at all that he would get claimed on waivers by somebody. But that's more likely to me than him actually getting sent down to Rochester, is they'll at least go through the waivers process in the first place. They're also, what I think is possible, and I guess I thought players had the ability to jump to the KHL or have done that while still under contract in the NHL. I guess that's not fully correct. Maybe there are instances in the past where guys have left for the KHL while still under the NHL contract, and the KHL guys maybe don't honor it, or I don't really know. Usually I think they have to be free agents because the International Ice Hockey Federation has to sign off on it. So what I was thinking back to was Patrick Berglund is one of these guys where, yeah, he's just done. He doesn't want to be here anymore, so he doesn't report. And what happens, the Sabres terminate his contract, and he goes to Europe. Rusty Klesla is another name for this. Here's a deep pull for you. Remember back in the tank year, the Sabres traded for Radoslav Klesla, who was a veteran defenseman, and he didn't want to report. He's like, I'm not coming. So what happened? The Sabres terminated his contract, and because he didn't report, and he went to Europe. I wonder if that is where we end up here with Alex Georgiev. And maybe it's not even bad blood between the two sides. It's just kind of something that happens, which would be that the Sabres waive him. Nobody claims Georgiev. They send him to Rochester. Georgiev says, yeah, I'm not really going to do that. I'm not reporting to Rochester. And then the Sabres go, well, if you're not reporting, we're terminating your deal. And then they do that, and he goes to Europe because he no longer is under contract. Maybe that's an idea. Maybe that's just the way this ends up playing out. I think one of the least likely outcomes is that he plays and it goes well. It's possible. It's a dart throw. I don't mind, by the way, that they signed him. What's the real downside here? All of these outcomes don't really result in any big consequence. Like, oh, you got a whole... The practice reps is maybe the worst part of this because you don't have to play him if you don't want to. And at worst, he's going to take up $800,000 of your salary, and he'll take up the roster spot of a 14th forward or an 8th defenseman. Like, I don't see a major consequence. It's annoying, and you'd like to not have this situation, but how bad is it? It's not devastating to anything that the Sabres are going to be this year or what they're going to do. It's just kind of it's a fly in an elephant's butt. It's just got to swat it away. And how are you going to do that? Well, let's see. The thing that I'll put it this way. The two most likely things I do think that will happen with Alex Georgiev is, one, he gets waived and he gets claimed. It's possible. I just don't think it's likely. I think the most likely idea, number one, over that is he's going to be on the roster and not playing. And they're going to hold on to him as insurance, and maybe he gets a start every other week, maybe less than that, probably less than that even. It is going to take, I think, for him to get in, obviously, an injury to one of the top two guys or one of the top two guys really performing poorly. And that's also possible. But if Alex Lyon and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen are playing fine, good, up and down even a little bit, but they're giving you some quality starts almost at least every other time that they're in the lineup, then I don't think Alex Georgiev plays a game for the Buffalo Sabres. He's going to need one of the top two to do something wrong to get in. So it's possible he doesn't play. But those are, as I see it, possible outcomes. Sits on the bench as the third string goalie, gets put on waivers and gets claimed, gets put on waivers, doesn't report to Rochester, and his contract gets terminated. Like, those to me are the most likely of what could happen here. And I won't lose sleep, and I don't think you should lose sleep either on any of these outcomes. When we come back, one defenseman that's been showing out at training camp so far, and with injuries, maybe is going to have to play. Ryan Johnson talk when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season's here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. And with hockey coming in just a week, get into those futures bets. Now is the time to take a look and see what you like. These divisions and these injuries in the Atlantic Division could have you thinking differently about Buffalo's chances or maybe Ottawa's chances. You could take a look at all of it. And of course, with football here right now, you got Thursday night game tomorrow, touchdown parlays. The app, by the way, is very good for just tracking. Like, if you've got guys in your fantasy league and you want to see what's going on in the game, FanDuel is great for that as well. So what are you waiting for? Remember this offer right now. New customer, $5 bet. You get $300 in bonus bets if you win. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, wrapping things up as we get you ready for Sabres and Penguins. The Penguins are going to be bad this year. Really, really bad this year, I believe. So for tonight's game, expected to be in the lineup and also maybe going to play opening night is Ryan Johnson, who is older than you think at this point. He's 24. Like, is he older than Rasmus Dahlin? Dahlin's got to be 24 at this point, doesn't he? Yeah, Dahlin is 25. So 1 year separating the two. Not much. And Dahlin's been here for, 7 years at this point. Ryan Johnson, who is who he is. He's a little bit undersized, not overly physical, not overly fast, not overly offensive defenseman. You might hear me lay that all and go, okay, well, what is he? He's smart. He's smart. He's a very good passer, and he's often in the right positions, and that can be enough. So in this case, I look at this player and I think, all right, not a very high ceiling, I think, but could he be an NHL player? I think at best he could, but it's got to be as a third pair guy. Someone that is playing actually about what he did for the Sabres a couple of years ago, which was not much, 14 minutes a night, give or take. In his NHL career, he's actually just over that, 14.08. Now, it's kind of easy to forget because, again, he's not a player that really jumps out at you, right? Like the number one skill set that would be noticeable from Ryan Johnson, like I don't really even know what it is. He didn't score a goal in professional hockey until last season, right? Like you just don't get a lot of pop with Ryan Johnson. But that doesn't mean he's not a good player and that he makes a good impact when he's out there in a third pair role. 2 seasons ago, 23-24, he did play 41 games for the Buffalo Sabres. He played half the season, averaging 13.52 a night. Again, no goals, 7 assists. Positive impact when he was out there. You look at some of the numbers, and they were better defensively when he was out there than they were offensively. You weren't getting a lot of offensive generated as a team when he was on the ice, but defensively, pretty good. Shutting down some plays, getting it out, and again, kind of that composure that I think Johnson has, which is going to make him a pro hockey player, whether it's the NHL level or not, for a long, long time. He's at least a career AHL guy that I think could have a really long career doing that. Right now, though, Bo Byram dealing with a nagging injury. Now, he's back at practice today, but he won't play tonight. Power's got this day-to-day thing. Samuelson's not practicing. Like, the blue line is a little thin right now. And at the moment, their pairings for the second day in a row, Dahlin is with Michael Kesselring, and Johnson's on the second pair with Connor Timmins. He's practicing ahead of Jacob Bryson. And that is the notable part that I want to get to here. It's not much of a battle. It's not like, live or die with who's my eighth defenseman. Oh, but that's the battle at the moment. Even your seventh defenseman, right? Because 7 and 8. Who's going to be your seventh defenseman? And at the moment, Johnson, from what I'm reading about what's going on in practice, what I've seen in the preseason, is that Johnson's ahead of Bryson. I mean, the pairings would tell you that today, of course, too. That he's practicing with an NHL guy, Connor Timmins, and Bryson is practicing with Rodney Murtka, who is likely not going to be an NHL guy. So Ryan Johnson, we could get a look at him at the start of the year, and I'd be excited for that, like to give him another crack at it, because 2 years ago, again, solid numbers for the team when he was out there in 41 games. Last year, he only played 3. You can't judge anything on that. So he went from getting a shot in the NHL level to, no, you're back to being a day-to-day AHL guy. And maybe this year the pendulum swings back in the other direction, that he's back to NHL 3/4 of the time, maybe AHL for about a quarter of the time. But here is where he's going to play a good amount. So keep an eye on Ryan Johnson. You might see him in the opening night lineup. And if he's playing tonight, see how he looks with Connor Timmins, because that could be the pairing at the start of the year. And they're tonight going to be the second pair, it looks like, behind Dahlin and Kesselring. All right, that's going to do it for us today here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. If you are looking for more of the show, head over to YouTube. You could listen wherever you get your podcasts in the same feed. Hit the like and subscribe button there. Also, more hockey talk with Locked On Fantasy Hockey, getting you ready for their drafts. You can check them out on wherever you're listening to your podcast. Steal and Flip got all those tips ready for your drafts with just about a week away to go until the start of the NHL season. And we'll talk to you after Sabres and Penguins here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.